Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And our guest is
Steve Hayes.
All right. Every now and then we do get to borrow Steve Hayes,
right.
who, if you have been living under a rock for a while, he is the president of Americans for Fair Taxation. That is the national level organization supporting the fair tax. He's probably done more media interviews than all the rest of us fair tax volunteers put together. Steve, thank you for your time today. We do like to borrow you here on a couple of occasions.
I always enjoy being with you. It's my pleasure.
All right.
Well, he is, Bob, he is the FAIRtax guy. We're just the FAIRtax guys. Steve is the FAIRtax guy.
Oh, you said the secret word, FAIRtax Guys. Here we go.
Oh, there you go.
I got Fat Albert with me today, so
Yes.
see how that goes.
Those Rubik's Cubes or something. Oh, my goodness.
Now, normally, when we have a guest on FAIRtax Power Radio, we do not do a Congress.gov segment. But I found something last night when I was looking for stuff to do, and also now this is really getting out there. Fox Business has done a story on it. There have been some links to that Fox Business story. I saw one on Facebook this morning. So this is going to get a lot of attention really quick, and I want to get to Mr. Hayes's take on it. This is it's almost how in the world could somebody actually think of this? But this is an actual bill, HR 8051 from Representative Don Beyer of Virginia, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to impose an additional, get this, 1,000% excise tax on the sale of large capacity ammunition feeding devices and semi-automatic assault weapons, and Scarborough, your favorite phrase, for other purposes.
Now, you have to have the ability to put stuff in later.
Yes. Well, we're not going to dive into the gun control debate, obviously, but I do want to get Steve's take on the appropriateness or inappropriateness of trying to achieve hot button political objectives through the tax code. Go.
Well, it is absolutely a major reason why you call up the IRS office, you never get an answer. It's an absolute reason why, when you are looking at the fact that because they decided they would never get to them to be able to catalog them, they destroyed 30 million information returns. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that you're asking these men and women to do something that was already pretty much impossible, which was try to enforce a very complicated income tax code. Mm-hmm. Now you're asking them to be in charge of gun control by imposing this excise tax. And is it going to be only on new guns, or are they going to try to do it on guns that are sold at gun shows that are used? What is it? I mean, you're talking about an immense problem, because now you've got someone like Bob Scarborough that says, well, I want to get an AR-15, but I don't want to pay 1,000% excise tax. So I'm going to get the guy that's selling it to go shoot a magazine through it. So now it's used, and that's not qualified as subject to the tax. Okay. And now you're going to have regulations from the IRS saying, no, that's not right, even though that's what we said. What we really meant was it had to be blah, blah. So you're compiling all of this complexity on an agency that can't do the job Congress gave it today, and you're asking them to do additional things. It's just absolutely ludicrous. I don't think the guy ever thought he had a chance of getting it passed, but the mere fact that he used it not in legislation, which he could have done, but by putting it into the Internal Revenue Code, shows you how far away it's gone.
Well,
and if we get rid of the Internal Revenue Code and the IRS, then what he would have to do is say, look, we're going to impose whatever this tax is on every manufacturer of AR-15s. That's what should have happened. But that's not the way it is. I mean, if you think that's what's fair, that's the only way to do it, to collect it. And that can be through legislation. There's still going to be excise taxes. There's still going to be imports. There's still going to be tariffs. Okay. But what we're talking about is doing it in a sensible way and not making a broken system become even less efficient. That is really ludicrous, but it shows you how far down this whole system has gone.
And they're chasing their tail if they're still dealing with can't keep up with paperwork to the point where they're having to flush some of it, which is insane as far as trying to comply. If we're out here working hard every day, spending a lot of money to comply with the code, and they're working hard on the other side to take the dirt out from under exactly where we're standing. It's a system that, as Steve said, is broken, and as Bob Paxton always says, it needs to be ripped out by the roots and thrown into the roots burned so that it never comes back. And that, in a nutshell, is what the fair tax does: a tax on consumption.
Right.
And it makes perfect sense. And the question we have for all of our listeners is, what are you doing today to get the word out about the fair tax? In the next 5 people that you see, hand them a card, or talk to them on the telephone, or have a dinner with someone and explain, or give a tip to your server at your favorite restaurant to spread the word. And people go, wow, this is really good. When we were in Florida, I'll tell this quick story and won't be long. Not any more than 20 minutes, I promise. No, actually, it'll just take 30 seconds. We were standing out at the bus stop waiting to go to CPAC. And there were several people in the little area there while we were waiting. And they saw my shirt, and they said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, we're the FAIRtax Guys. Oh, you're the FAIRtax guy, because I had the shirt on and it said it on the back. So, yeah, I'm the FAIRtax guy. And, well, what is that? I said, it's the most revolutionary change to the way our government operates that you'll ever find. And I handed them one of the cards, the card stock card that had the details on it. I said, please read over this and get in touch with us if you have any questions. But you'll find out that as a worker, you get to keep your whole paycheck, and it really does change competitiveness in the marketplace from top to bottom, and does so to supercharge the American economy at the same time. And so
Right.
and you have opportunities like that, folks. You have opportunities like that every day to take 10 or 15 seconds or 30 seconds and say that to somebody. And then all of a sudden they're like following you around, wanting to ask you more questions, or they're calling you on the phone after they let it sink in just a little bit. And really, it is so revolutionary. We get excited about it. Okay, I'll yield back my time.
Okay, well, we will move on. We will have a full-fledged Congress.gov segment on next week's FAIRtax Power Radio show and dig into the insanities and absurdities of the tax code. But I will say this: the one we just talked about, the 1,000% excise tax on magazines and assault, that was going into the Hall of Shame for 2021. We'll be visiting this one again at the end of the year.
Going straight to the Hall of Shame.
That goes in our tax proposal Hall of Shame. But as I say, we've got Steve Hayes here every week. He writes something called the Chairman's Report. And it just happens, as on the day that we're recording this is going to stream a couple of days from now. But on the day we're recording this, the Chairman's Report came out on just a very pressing issue that is in everybody's radar screen, and that's the supply chain crisis and inflation and stuff that's going on. So I thought we'd kind of pick Steve's brain about how he came about to write this article and where all the information in it came from.
You ask me the question and I'll respond, or do you want me just to respond?
Just take off. How did it come to you to write that article, and kind of where did all the information come from?
Well, it's interesting. It's one of those things that is so simple that you don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a podcast, and what a lady said to me, the lady interviewing me, she said something that triggered this. She said, is it anything to, is all of these problems, inflation and all of these products we can't get, is that any relationship to our tax system? And like the light bulb goes off, and I said, absolutely. And
you better believe it.
Yeah. And I explained to her in a few minutes how the basic plan of the income tax, the way it's set up, has been so counterproductive to keeping production in the United States. I said, obviously the problem isn't getting, she was in Washington State, it's not getting something from Washington State to Arkansas or Arkansas to Washington State. It's getting something from Asia that has to come in, wait in line on the container ship, then go to Arkansas to be made, and then go to Washington. It's not a problem of supplying it in our country. It's a problem because our tax code has so inhibited the ability of companies in the US making products to compete that it's driven the production overseas. There isn't any other underlying reason for most of this, because people say, well, Nike was paying, this was some years ago, but $1 an hour, and they'd have to pay 15 over here. But Nike was also experiencing the fact that their plant might be down 5 hours because of the power. The infrastructure is not there. They were also experiencing the fact that the quality control was 30% less than it would have been over here. So when you even it all out, what was the reason they were staying there? They were staying there because they got a tax advantage to be there. And that was enough to make up the difference and make it profitable.
So if we take away,
go ahead.
So I'm just saying, if we take away all of the disincentives that the current income tax, imposes on, international businesses, what happens?
Well, what happens is that a lot of companies, as I said, are overseas, not because they want to be necessarily, but because if you're overseas and you are exporting it back to the United States, and a lot of our imports are US companies that have plants overseas.
Oh, yeah.
They are allowed to get a rebate at the border of whatever they have paid in value-added tax. So if they've paid 20%, value-added tax, every step of the process, there's a tax levied on the increased value. The total is in some places 15, some places 20%. When it leaves France, for example, which I think is 18, it comes over here with that amount stripped out. So it comes over here, let's say 20% for math's easy, at 80% of what it sells in France. So it comes here. We don't tax it the same way. We don't have a federal tax. We basically bring it over here and allow it to compete with our products. And our products, though, they have the cost of our government, like Bob said, the compliance cost, Social Security, and income tax, all the way along the progression of the thing. Everybody has to mark up their product to cover all those costs. And so at the end of the day, you have products that we make here that are 12, 14%, up to 20% more expensive than they would need to be if we did not have the income payroll tax system. So we have our products with all of our cost to government competing with their products with a significant portion taken out. Now, you say, well, okay, so that puts us at a disadvantage over here. Now, when we send products over there, though, what happens? We carry all of the cost of our government, that 12, 15, 20%, when it gets over there.
So it's a distinct disadvantage by the difference between the value added tax stripped away and what we send it over there at essentially a full wholesale for them.
That's right. And so what we're talking about is that we have, and after World War II, we were the only place in the world that was really able to manufacture, and we were the driving force around the world. We didn't have to worry about competition. But now we're in a totally different environment. But the tax code is the same as it was
Right.
when we were on top of the world and had no competition. We have literally driven people out of business. Like this young lady was telling me about, one of the things that bothers her is she's gone to movies and she can't get popcorn because all the paper products that they put the popcorn in, they're having trouble getting them. And I said, well, when I grew up in Arkansas, we had a paper plant there that used to produce that. But it got put out of business and that production moved overseas. But if it was still in operation, you think you'd have any trouble getting paper products from Arkansas to Washington State?
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
And
not.
so and the other thing that's so crazy, the more we do here in terms of production, the more benefit to America from the point of view of jobs, pay, okay, infrastructure, all the people around that service that plant. But the other part of this that becomes important in the inflation argument is that inflation, very simply, is too much money chasing too few products. That's been the classic definition forever.
That's
And the
right.
Fed
Okay.
tries to fix that by cutting down the money and raising all the interest rates. If they'd attack it from the other end, make it so that we can get more supply, that would actually be a
It
less
makes a big
painful way to
difference.
deal with it.
Well, for example, let's say that, like all of the three of us remember a few years ago going to a car lot and saying, I want the blue one,
Mhm.
and negotiating it down to some price and driving off. Well, you go there today,
Hey,
and what happens? You go in and they say, well, Bob, we would like to have you get that car. You give us a $750 deposit, and when one comes in, we'll call you.
6
You'll
months.
be on the list.
And when will that be?
And they won't even know when it's going to be. They can say, well, we hope by the end of the year. Well, a lot of that's not because you're not assembling cars here, which we are, but because they've moved so many of the component production overseas. So they can't complete the assembly. The chips. We
Mhm.
put the production of all the chips that are going into these smart cars overseas. We could make them here, but Intel and others found a 20% advantage to make them overseas. They're in business to make money. Why aren't they going to do that?
And and businesses are going to take the path of least resistance to the profit. They're
Yes.
going to figure out a way to maximize profit for the shareholders and be competitive at the same time. But now we're looking at things that news and world events, and China's sitting there saber rattling against Taiwan, and Taiwan makes a certain product that goes in a computer that it may run your car. Or the newer the car, the more chances are it is run by a computer. And
Yes.
getting the products in to assemble those vehicles is difficult, if not almost impossible. I had a friend of mine who wanted a particular car, same story you just told. And they said, how about this one? No, I really want this one. Well, this is the only one we have right now. Do you need a car today? Well, you need to take this car that we have on the lot. So he's driving a car that he wasn't really interested in, but hey, guess what? He's got four wheels and a motor and a steering wheel, and he's able to go down the road. So, I mean, this is a challenge. And if everything were back here and you do the fair tax and everything comes back to the states, competitive competition goes up, and we begin to be the go-to country as we once were, it can happen. And it can happen with the fair tax, a tax
Absolutely.
on consumption.
And the other part that goes hand in hand with this is that what you've got is, some people say it's 10, some people say it's $20 trillion. That's on what they call the shelf. And we got a glimpse into that when the Panama Papers came out, but it's all the people who have from Russia, from China, some from the US, who have chosen to hide money where it's under no country's jurisdiction. So they park this money, and that's why they call it the shelf. And that money is going around trying to find a place to invest. Well, if you have the fair tax, what you're now telling people, you invest in the United States, you're investing in the world's best economy, you're investing in a country that has the best infrastructure, you're investing in a country that has huge demand, and you're investing in a country that doesn't tax your return on investment. What's not to like?
It would
If
be
they
like
go to Germany, they're going to pay 30 to 40% on their return.
yeah.
If they go, well, if they come here now, they're going to pay 1% on their return because they're not subject to any tax treaty. So they're going to be treated the same way as another investor. You can come here and buy real estate. And if you're from London, you're going to get one treatment because there's a tax treaty. But if you're on the shelf, you're going to have a 30% withholding on real estate gain until you file a return. Well, they don't want to file a return because they don't want to identify themselves.
Right.
So they've got a 30% disincentive to invest here. So basically, you open the doors, and when all of that money comes in, you're going to be able to do something that has been missing before. And that is increase the productivity to the point where the prices will come way down. In other words, the prices of what it costs us to make products become much less because we have more productive ways of doing it.
Okay.
We've been able to invest in the infrastructure, and all this money is going to be looking to invest.
Let me ask you something.
So I think
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I just think the infrastructure is so important, and it would make such a huge difference in inflation today, because if we were able to give the products people wanted, like Bob's friend, right now, there would be a lot less of this. We're going to charge you, and I bet, Bob, they told you the same thing they told me. I said, what's this charge of $3,000 over the sticker price? Oh, that's our appearance package or whatever. And I said, what is that? And basically it was a tacked on charge.
Right.
Well, if they had a lot of cars, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
They're going to, and plus, because you take away all of those costs, they can sell your friend that car for 10 to 15 to 20% less and make the same money.
We got about five
built into the price of the car.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes left here. One other thing I want to ask you real quick. Are our politicians just so dense that they can't figure this out? Or are they so selfish that they're putting their own interests that they can, all the benefits they can get for themselves out of the income tax, and why they are resisting the fair tax? Because they don't understand it, or because they are just so entrenched, the income tax system is their gravy train?
Well, I think it's a lot of the things. In fact, probably it's all of it. There are a lot of people that are dense. There's also an arrogance. There's a story. What's the difference between a politician and God? God didn't think he's a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they have a lot of that arrogance. They know best. And so therefore, if they see something that they think needs to be changed, and they can do it through the income tax, like if a certain behavior, well, just like the assault rifle, a certain behavior they don't like, by golly, they put a tax on it. If you and I are investing in a 401k, and there was actually legislation proposed that said, we have told you that all the earnings are going to be tax-free until you take it out.
Right.
But we are now thinking we're going to change that, and anything over 250,000, any earnings are going to be currently taxable. You say, wait a minute, that's not what they told me, but that's because it's not a contract. The Supreme Court has ruled they can change it anytime. So now they have this little lever, and what's going to happen when they do that? They're going to get all these lobbying dollars in from all the big investment firms that run 401ks, even if it was not even serious. because they can't afford not to come in and spend a lot of money. So what you've got is a situation where the politicians like the control, they love the money it gives them. And a lot of them, frankly, just don't have enough free attention to really understand anything except what they can do to get reelected.
Yeah, and I would venture to say that you wouldn't necessarily, I would take advice from 318 million Americans figuring something out versus a group of politicians in Washington in the halls of Congress trying to come up with an answer for the same problem. I think I would err towards going with we the people as opposed to even the people that we elected to figure everything out.
I think you're totally correct. And you've got people, frankly, who are up there who are a lot of the problem are the people that work for them. I mean, if you talk to your representative and you'll find out that she is overbooked or could be overbooked 5 times every day that she's up there. Yep. Because there's all of these different hearings, events, things to go to. So they rely very heavily on people on their staff. Almost all of their staff haven't had a job in the private sector since they were babysitters or mowed lawns.
Right.
They've been working for government or think tanks ever since, and they basically don't have any real world experience, and they rely exclusively, well, the computer model said, blah, blah, blah. And therefore it must be true. And this is information that's being fed to these representatives who can't know everything. I mean, literally, you can't expect them to know everything about tax, everything about trade, everything about these other areas. So they rely on their staff. And who do they have working for them? They have people who frankly don't understand business and who use a computer because the computer is God. If the computer says it, it must be true.
Correct.
And I really believe, Bob, that's a long answer to your question, but I really believe that that's at the root of a lot of the problem.
Agreed.
Well, I tell you what, I hate to tell you, but we have just flat run out of time here. Steve, we do appreciate your time and your expertise, and we will see if we can talk to you a little bit more often here on FAIRtax Power Radio.
I would love it, Bob, anytime. I really would.
Thank you.
I really enjoy it.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All righty. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And in the middle is
Steve Hayes. Thanks very much, everyone.
We remind you once again that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me how it works.
You know, it's probably changed since the last time I saw it, but the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, now see, that's amazing.
So the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.
That's the fair tax. We tax what you consume as you consume it, and that's it.